Radio with Katie Gallanti and Jay Perron. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Yes, you are. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio, and it's Sunday, the 12th of October 2014, and today we are here, Katie Gallanti and myself. Everything's working. I don't understand. Everything's working. The chat rooms are working, the transmitter's working, the streamer's working, Skype is working, we haven't been interfered with. My love, my dear, my sweet sister, Katie, good afternoon. Yeah. How are you, my love?
I'm okay. I'm emerging from 4 to 6 weeks of very intense, I'm going to call them health changes rather than health challenges, okay? Because, I haven't actually been on the radio since kind of the beginning of September. And, a part of that is because I was feeling really, really ill. And it kind of started around mid-August. It was really, really hot here, and my body doesn't do heat well. And, there's a little conspiracy around the heat thing because we have had this extended heat wave since May, really, with very little let-up. And, after about 3 or 4 months of extended heat, the body starts complaining, right? And I don't do heat very well anyway. I don't particularly like it. And on top of that, I was working really hard, and I had more clients than ever and a lot of emails. And I also had 2 clients that were particularly infested with energies, right? That kind of started bombarding me with their energy, wanting help at a time in which I could not give it, but somehow managing to get into my field anyway, right? So it was like a perfect storm. I just had too much stuff going on from too many angles all at the same time, and at some point my body just felt like it was going belly up, right? I was having stroke-like symptoms. I was having heart symptoms, as if I was going to have a heart attack. I had several days in which my body temperature was so high, the only way that I could get it to come down was to jump into an ice-cold shower and stay there for like 30 minutes. And then, an hour later, my body temperature was high again, and I had to do the whole thing all over again, right? So, kind of challenging and kind of scary. So eventually I decided that there was something probably bigger going on, like really real, not just a energy shift type thing. So I went to a very good doctor who is also a naturopath but also has proper medical training, and we put me through a bunch of tests and basically decided that I had really severe anemia, and when I mean severe, it was one step away from high output heart failure. That is basically because there's not enough oxygen and red blood cells in the body. The heart has to work overtime to get the oxygen circulating through the body, right? And I think that was actually probably the biggest thing on the physical level that was going on with me. He also found that my thyroid was a little bit on the low side, and that my adrenals were kind of a little off, but that's nothing new there. But I think all of the weird, really extreme symptoms were coming because my body was just under too much pressure, and I had very little blood, right? So my heart was struggling and all that. So I had to take some time out to basically reboot the body, okay? And in the middle of that, I don't know if this was part of it or if my councils just decided to tag this along since I was doing it anyway, right? Basically they started to kind of do an intense energy upgrade to myself, which they're still doing, and I'm not quite sure exactly what the result of that is going to be, but I'm being informed that there's one of my higher dimensional bodies is coming down and integrating at the moment, and so we shall see what that translates into in terms of, usually it translates into something different in my work, or energy work or whatever, do you know what I mean? And I was told that one of the reasons for which this needed to happen at this time is because there are challenges that are coming up for the world at the world level. And this kind of started before the whole Ebola thing really kicked up. And I believe that, this summer we were kind of looking at Isis, and we were looking at all of the Isis rituals that they were doing, and Hecate, that's like the death ritual, right? It's not a death ritual, but they were invoking Hecate, goddess of death and transitions, as part of the rituals that they were doing. And so now we are seeing not just the theme that we were expecting, that was the theme that had to do with war, but we are also seeing the Ebola virus drama kind of kicking up, right? And patient zero here in America is, can't remember his name, but he was in Dallas, and apparently he's already died. And before he died, he managed to go to several key places and spread the whole thing around, right? And which is not funny, but obviously part of some kind of agenda. I mean, it's interesting with things like this. We have had so many false events that you look at things and you think, well, does this person even exist, and did he even really have this virus to begin with, right? There's always that kind of thought. We could always be looking at the usual staging of an event to get a reaction, right? But it seems to me that there's some, there's objective truth about this virus. It really does seem to exist. It also seems that it's being exported around the world, with no borders being closed. And so it's almost being facilitated. The exporting of this virus is being facilitated instead of curtailed. And so we have to think about, why would they be doing that, right? So now there's cases in England, there's cases in Australia, there's cases in Spain, there's cases in America, and the prediction is that it's going to spread, right? And so we could be looking at a pandemic, or we could be looking at a fear of a pandemic with certain kinds of consequences, right?
So this is an interesting thing. There's one, this is going back to a few years ago. There used to be things that used to go around on the internet. People send this to all your friends. Such and such from Microsoft said that such and such from this does this, and will delete your hard drive, kill your grandmother, and sends you to the moon. And of course, what that was it was an emotional virus. There was no virus. It was a hoax, but the hoax itself is a virus. Do you see what I mean? It has its own, and it creates a panic energy. Now, all panic puts us into the fight, flight, fear, run, freeze thing. But it's no good for our bodies to be on that all the time. And here we are, we're on a high state of alert, 24/7, 365. Somebody's going to snap, somebody's going to get ill. Obviously, right. They're really pushing for everybody to get ill. Now, what you're saying, that there was a Hecate invocation, is that basically what they're talking about, they're invoking mass death, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And also, we know that these guys operate in a problem, reaction, solution kind of way. That was David Icke's baby, the problem reaction solution thing, but I think he nails it because that's how they do operate. So they're giving us a problem, right? So the problem is big, nasty virus coming out of Africa, real or not real, that it may be. And it's coming out of Africa, it's killing a lot of people, and it's spreading like wildfire through the West, right? Now, obviously, they didn't do a hell of a lot to stop this thing from spreading because, it was kind of easy. Just say nobody from this country can come into another country for the time being until the virus has been contained, which apparently, by the way, other African countries have done. But for some reason, and quoting kind of politically correct kind of reasons, the people from countries that are at risk have allowed to come in anyway. So of course, once you get something on the aeroplanes, then it spreads. Do you know what I mean? And in theory, Ebola should not be an airborne virus, but it seems to be behaving as if it is behaving at all, right? And so anyway, so the potential for this thing to spread is actually really high. So then you have to think about, okay, so if they are allowing for something to come into the United States, if they're allowing for something to come into the UK, to come into Spain and Europe, to come into Australia, there's cases even in Central and South America, right? So if they're allowing for this to spread, which could have been blocked just with a simple closing down of travel from Liberia, right? Well, instead apparently they're giving away visas like hotcakes, right? So they want these people to leave and to go around and spread the seed, right? So that is the problem, and obviously they want a reaction, and the reaction is do something about this. They have already been saying that they are cooking the vaccine. However, there's an interesting story about Ebola, because Ebola apparently has a patent, and the patent is owned by the US government. Okay.
Oh, isn't that funny? Funny, does it happen to anything to do with Fort Detrick?
That's right. Okay, so, if you make cook a virus or modify a virus or whatever in a way that it has a patent, about 9 times out of 10 you will also have an antidote or a vaccine for that very same thing, right? Because here, when we talk about patents around pathogens of this kind, we're actually talking about, germ warfare, right? Biowarfare.
Exactly. And this is also Sorry, but there's another aspect to this, and this is the commercial aspect. In that, if somebody comes into a doctor's waiting room and the doctor diagnoses them as having disease X, okay, so they could say Ebola hemorrhagic fever, right? That's what they got. It's in a big book, and in the book it says this is the drug for this treatment. And if the doctor does not prescribe that specific drug for that treatment of that diagnosis, then they get potentially jailed. That's the threat. So the doctor is coerced to make a diagnosis and then prescribe a particular drug, which of course is this is a commercial situation here, because there's not a generic, So it's a big scam. It's a big money-making scheme, isn't it? Because it might be that these viruses might get cured if you're white. That's the other thing, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. However, I think that what we're looking at here is H1N1 round 2. Okay? If you remember when the H1N1 came out in 2009, and I remember it really well because that is the time, until that moment, I was doing all of my research by myself. I had been doing research on all of these topics at a really deep level probably since the year 2000, right? Before 9/11, I already knew a lot of stuff before 9/11, just because I think I was supposed to know before it happened, right? And then 9/11 happened, and I saw right through it because I had already done a lot of research, and so I did even more research, and I was doing a lot of research on MK Ultra and, the Bush families and medical conspiracies, all of that kind of stuff, right? And then when but up until 2009, I was doing that in my own private life mostly, and in public, I was writing about psychology and metaphysics and, more spiritual topics, and I was not really touching this particular thing, right? And then in 2009, the H1N1 thing started, and around April 2009, and my guides at the time, we've since switched guides, but they basically said, okay, you need to get out and start being vocal. And one of the reasons was because the threat at the time felt very real, not in terms of the actual H1N1 virus, but in terms of the vaccine. Because if you remember, at the time they did a massive effort to get everybody vaccinated with Tamiflu. And Tamiflu was owned by a company in which Rumsfeld had the majority of the shares. And it had all sorts of nasty stuff in it, like squalene and mercury and all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah, it was a nice cocktail of death that people are trying to get away from death.
Yes, and also there was a feeling, even if that never came out, because obviously very few people actually ended up taking this vaccine. Apparently, the statistics around the numbers of people that actually took Tamiflu as a vaccine worldwide was that only 20% of the people to who the vaccine had been offered actually took it over that whole 6 months period of drumming people into taking the vaccine. Very, very few people took the vaccine, right? Considering how blindly people follow stuff usually. It was a flop. The people didn't take the vaccine.
Yeah, nobody bought. I mean, again, it's all about selling and buying and persuasion.
It is.
So, is there, I wonder if there's something in this Ebola vaccine that is like some kind of industrial waste product that they got loads of, that they're just going to because, you need like 20 centilitres of liquid to pump into somebody, like 18 of that will be water, and 2 of that might be some junk, and like 0.1111 of that would be the actual drug itself, because and of course that's made out of genetically modified bacteria these days. Probably they get some poor little amoeba to shit this stuff out, and then they stick it into our bodies. So anyway, now I've given everybody confidence in doctors' vaccines.
That's right.
Let's because really, this the vaccine is part of the death, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And not only that, and this is a totally 100% a psychic hit and not anything that I can say, hey, go and read this or go and read that. But my intuition is that these people have some kind of technology that obviously we're not privy to, that has some way of not necessarily tampering with DNA, but almost like attaching itself to DNA and then creating some kind of mess, right? So it's almost like a biologically active DNA inhibitor of some kind.
Scrambler.
Yeah, a DNA scrambler. And the sense that I get, and I used to get this this feeling even before, when the H1N1 was going around. There was something about it that was supposed to be activated at the DNA level, right? And I had a client the other day. I'm back to work, so I'm seeing clients again, which is going okay. My health is good enough for that at the moment. So she asked me about Ebola because her health is not very good, so she wanted to know what I thought about it and so on. And again, I had the same feeling when I was kind of tuning in onto this, that that there was something about the vaccine that is going to come down the pipe that is not just toxic. No news there. Obviously, the more toxins they can put in us, the better, right? But there's something about it that is also more than toxic, that there's some kind of organic DNA interfacing something that is going in there. And the pictures that I was getting psychically were almost like something that then allows for almost like a transmission, a collective transmission to go in, a frequency transmission of some kind. And I was getting pictures of the bog, the usual stuff, right? And I was getting pictures of some kind of neural network, right?
Oh, I see. So they're turning everybody into a darknet.
That's right.
Like darknet is Wi-Fi connections.
Yeah, and she said to me, well, what about the people that were vaccinated in 2009? Wouldn't it occur to them, right? And again, this is totally psychic intuition type stuff. It's not, this is not hard science. But I was getting that this thing only works, or they're only activating it. Maybe it works anyway, but they're only activating it once they have, like a majority of the population, kind of all together. Do you know what I mean? That it's not that they're doing it just for 20% of the people. It's almost like it's there dormant, but they can trigger it if when everybody is ready, kind of thing, right? And so this also would explain one of the reasons which even since 2009, at least here in America, I don't know about in England, every time you go to the pharmacy, to get aspirin or antibiotics or whatever, the cashier will also say to you, oh, and would you like a flu shot? Right.
Yeah, we'll do something for the weekend.
And it's like,
exactly, it's a constant pressure, isn't it?
That's right. It's like, well, actually, it's July. It's really hot. I don't want a flu shot right now. Right? But they're like, oh, 2 for the price of one flu shot. Oh, you can vaccinate your whole family, right? And there seems to be something about this also, because, people have talked about forced vaccinations and stuff, but I'm wondering, I've got a feeling that may not happen, and I'm telling you why I have a feeling that the forced vaccinations may not happen. First of all, forcing anything down anybody's throat it's going to create a stink up, right? Like, people are going to get agitated about that kind of thing. But also, there's this Luciferian free will thing, right? They want you to take the poison by yourself. They want you to take the poison, and they will manipulate you into taking the poison, but they actually want you to put the poison in your mouth by yourself, right? Because that's their policy. So how are they going to get people to stick the poison in their veins by themselves? Well, you create a massive amount of fear, okay? And how do you create a massive amount of fear? Well, obviously H1N1 wasn't scary enough, right? Because people didn't
rush to the vaccination stand. No. And even when they're offered it free, they still wouldn't take it.
No.
Free
no.
poo-poo.
And also, all of the vaccine activists kind of came online, right? There was various kinds of them. There was the ones that, had bad experiences with vaccines because of autism and that other neurological syndrome that some people get, Guillain-Barré, or I can't remember the name of it. I'm always very bad at names.
Something Guillain-Barré or something.
That's right, yeah. That is basically a neurological shutdown thing that happens to people when they're overloaded with mercury. It's pretty much the same thing that happens with the children as well. It's like mercury is a neurotoxin. Even in very small quantities, mercury is a neurotoxin. And literally there are studies in which you put mercury in a petri dish with some neurons, and the neuron sheaths begin to degenerate and destroy.
It's on YouTube. You can see it for yourself. Mercury damages, absolutely. I think you search for mercury damaging neurons or something.
Absolutely, it does. It damages the neuron sheath that is basically the coating of the neuron, it's like if you think about a wire, there's the copper inside and there's the plastic around it, right? So in the brain, the neuron is like the electrical signal shooting thing, and the sheath is the coating that keeps it from fraying and firing off randomly. And that sheath gets destroyed by mercury, right? So if you have just a tiny bit of destruction, fine. But if you start to inject people with tons of vaccines when they're still in their formative years, you basically damage all of that stuff, and then you have a very normal child that all of a sudden is autistic, okay? And there's still a lot of people on the internet that say that it's completely crazy to say that vaccines cause autism, but there's also a lot of research that also sustains the fact that, you know, the kid goes in normal, and after vaccination number 15 comes out and he's no longer normal, right? And so a lot of those people kind of came online in 2009, 2010. Then there was the more patriot type of people that were basically, I'm sovereign of my body and I don't want you to stick anything in it, so go away kind of thing, right? And then there was the conspiracy people that were like, oh, they're going to put the nanochip in you, don't take the vaccine. So then there was the health conscious people that didn't want it because of the squalene and so on. And then there was that woman, do you remember that Austrian woman that started talking about, what was she whistleblowing about?
Oh,
I can't remember.
She saw
the ferrets.
They were vaccinations. They were in a batch. They were coming from an Eastern European country, and she saw that they. When they did a test on the rabbits, the lab rabbits, they all just flopped over and died. And that was vaccines that were going to be administered to humans, and she manages to stop that. And that was from Bayer International?
That's right.
So,
it was.
Yeah, Bayer, one of the famous death industry companies, you know.
Or was it Baxter?
Baxter, yes, Baxter.
Yeah.
Well,
at the time, I was going through another anemia patch. I suffer from anemia every now and then. My blood goes crazy, right? And they sent me to the hospital, and I had to have an intravenous injection of iron, and on the bag it said Baxter Pharmaceuticals, and I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no, this does not look good.
No, I mean, I think if something says something on the packet, you know, if it says iron oxide for India, you can be guaranteed that that's going to be iron oxide. But if something says flu vaccine, that's going to be any old shit. You know, you can put old diapers and thermometers and broken glass and nanobots and all sorts of crap in there.
Absolutely. So at that time, I think it was Baxter. And she was blowing the whistle on that. Her name was Jane something, some long Austrian name. And
Burgermeister? Jane Burgermeister. Wow, that was a few years ago, wasn't it? And that was a Project Avalon, when Bill and Kerry were together.
Right.
Oh, how romantic. Oh, anyway.
Romantic. Nostalgia for the good old days.
Oh, I remember when Bill and Kerry were together and everybody was happy and we were all nice.
Right.
And nobody shouted at each other and nobody swore and dissed. Anyway, sorry, go on.
And the Project Camelot videos were amazing, right, at the time. You know, there was a lot of information that was coming through. In some ways, now we're all a bit bored because we've discovered everything already, right? So the good old days when we were discovering things were fun.
That's right. I mean, we're now on the next turn of the spiral because we're discovering a whole bunch of people who, and we're Project Camelot for them. And I think that's really, you know, we've got quite a lot to stand up to, but to step up to keep up that kind of level of quality, because I mean, Kerry and Bill knocked out some awesome stuff. So let's
they did. I mean, they created when the biggest quality competitor to your work is yourself, right? If what you've already done, it's not always easy to keep that kind of that kind of quality going. And also just generally, even without that, we really have uncovered, I would say, about 85% of what there is to uncover. And so, there's going to be a time in which the kind of work that we do, if all goes well, is obsolete. It's not needed anymore, and that will be a good time, and we'll do other things at that point. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, in this particular instance, I think that what we're seeing right now is H1N1 2. It's called Ebola, right? They had to make it into a more scary monster. They probably are really having to have a real Ebola outbreak, because otherwise people would find out that it's not real, and do you know what I mean? It's almost it needs to be real enough that people are really going to get freaked out about it.
That's right. But I have a feeling about, they talk about, we found all these people in Africa, and a whole village has been died and all that stuff. I think that was a CIA operation as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have no doubt about that.
It's like all they need to do is take a light bulb full of this stuff,
and spread it.
Run through, chuck it down across the wall, and it'll gradually spread, and you can infect a whole village. Oh, we'd have to kill them all. Oh, right, well, what about the people who weren't infected? Oh, well, So there would be, So it's evil upon evil upon evil, and evil is used to. And I think, hey, I just had a thought that doing that will also be a satanic ritual, wouldn't it, darling?
Absolutely.
So that's what it's about, isn't it? They use the bouncing magic around, so they kill a whole, and they use that to generate the fear in America.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I completely agree on that too. We're starting to think too alike, JayPee.
Well, we've got a pool of we're shared pool of ideas that come to visit us. Yes, it's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because remember that what we have been seeing this year, particularly, right? We've had this sequence of rituals, which obviously have had a lot of there's some intensity behind them, right? We had the death of Philip Senior Hoffman. Philip meaning, lover of horses. There was a lot of, he was killed, supposedly he died, but he was killed through an alleged heroin overdose, which is also horse, right? It's the year of the horse, so a lot of horse type stuff. There was the Winter Olympics that also had the horse symbolism in it, and then as we know, then that is the energy that is pulled forward for further rituals like I think it was the Grammys with Katy Perry that was singing the Dark Horse ritual, and in that Dark Horse ritual performance at the Grammys, she is dressed in kind of like Witches of Sabbath kind of gear, all dressed in black, and there's these big, tall, black beings behind her that look kind of like you would imagine some demonic entities would look, right? They're all cloaked. They kind of look like the in the movie Amadeus with Mozart and Salieri, when Salieri goes to knock on his door and he's like this ominous figure all cloaked with a black mask. That's kind of what they look like, okay? And the horse comes out in the video. It's dragged on stage for no reason whatsoever, right? And it looks identical to the horse at the Denver airport. And if you remember, we commented on that at the time, that this horse was obviously the horse of the Denver airport. It was a dark black horse. It is the horse of death in the apocalypse, right? Mm-hmm. And it has the glowing red eyes, and it also had that kind of like fiberglass kind of look to it. So it literally felt like they had taken the horse from the Denver airport and they had made it into some stage prop and then introduced it into this Witches' Sabbath Dark Horse song that Katy Perry was singing, and for which she won awards at the VMAs, by the way. She won awards for that song. It's a completely horrible song. How can you possibly win an award for that? You know, music has really gone down the toilet. That is a different, you know what I mean? Like, at least before, in the 60s, I'm doing a lot of research on the 60s at the moment because I'm preparing to either write about it or talk about it. And it was all mind control back then as well, but at least it was quality music. Right? Now they don't even bother.
That's
we
right.
have to listen.
Would you like a nice tune with that mind control? Or no. I'll just have it straight with a, you know, just straight from the electronic generator.
That's right. If you want to mind control me with some taste, please. You know, go back to the origins, find some good stuff. But obviously the people nowadays, they don't care, because if you go to any of these videos, they have millions of views, so they don't need to even make the effort to actually make a nice tune anymore. Right. So at the time we had commented that this horse was the horse of death, and that it seemed to be connected to the Denver airport. And the Denver airport is an interesting one, because aside from the fact that obviously that it was built, you know, as a representative of the Nazi faction of the Illuminati. There are various factions within the Illuminati, and some are more hardcore than others. There's the ones that are more focused on environmentalism and climate change and, you know, making global taxation, and they have more of a socialist kind of agenda, right? And then there's the factions. Those are the ones, for example, that go with Russell Brand and The Economist and even Barack Obama to some extent, and Al Gore are kind of connected to that faction, right? And they have a more progressive-looking agenda. It's still an agenda of control, but they're going at it through a social engineering that comes through a socialist progressive kind of lens, right? Well, instead, then there's the complete psycho branch of the Illuminati that are the ones that are more invested into the whole satanic thing and truly dark elite type stuff. And within that, there's a Nazi faction, and there's a even more dark Satanist faction, from what I have gathered from research. Okay, and apparently there's 7 factions, and now I can't remember all of them. I would have to look at my notes to do that, which I don't have right now. But one of them is associated with the Denver airport, and the Denver airport is shaped like a swastika. It actually looks like a swastika. They've made the runways so that's what it looks like from the aerial view. There's underground bases underneath it, apparently, and, you know, there's vents that show you that there's stuff going on underground there. And then the airport itself has all of this strange stuff in it. So it has suitcases with gargoyles that come out of them, because that's really cheery at the airport to see that while you're queuing up for your tickets. Right. Check in your luggage and next to the gargoyle. Right. And then there's the big horse that is outside, right? And apparently that horse was built by some guy and sculptor, obviously, and when he was done, the horse fell on him and killed him.
Oh. How convenient.
Yeah, so he finished it, and then the horse killed him, which, by the way, happens a lot. A lot of movies where certain energies are pulled in, like The Exorcist, like Rosemary's Baby, and so on. Bad stuff happens on those movies. Sets catch on fire, and, you know, bad things happen, and often people get either injured or, you know, or there's incidents and things. So it's not always a very good idea to ask for certain energies to come through. They don't automatically love you just because you called them in, okay? And
often they may be a little grumpy because they might have been resting or sleeping somewhere.
That's right. Or they're like, oh, finally, I can finally unleash my fury. Oh, stupid man that called me in. Let me like squish you like a bug. Oh, you
Let
think
me express that fury on you. Yeah.
That's right. It's like the old stories, like Aladdin's lamp, where you call in the genie, and then the genie is horrible. Right?
Oh yeah. Or the rabbit's paw. No, the monkey's paw. Did you ever read that one?
No.
Well, it's like this couple. They find this lucky monkey's paw, and they ask the question. Oh, we want £10,000. So they immediately there's a knock on the door. Oh, your son's just been caught in been mangled in the machinery. Here's £10,000 compensation. And they go, oh no, we want our son back. So the son comes back, and they hear a knock on the door. They look through the letterbox, and he's all mangled still. Oh no, get rid of him, and that was their 3 wishes. So that's the monkey's paw in 2 minutes.
Oh, excellent. Well, these are all cautionary tales about not working with a bad genie, right? The Arabic tales have a lot of that kind of stuff in it, and apparently in the Muslim tradition, the nature and presence of what they call the jinn are kind of widely accepted, and so there's things to learn about reading some of those fairy tales as well, because they've had a lot of expertise in calling in stuff and then have it backfire, right? Mm-hmm. So, but obviously the sculptor of the Denver horse did not quite read enough of Arabic tales, right? So he made the dark statue and called in black horse, and then the black horse fell on him and killed him. Okay? So black horse is still up there, and I was doing some very basic research on it yesterday, and apparently that statue, there's been debate around it because the people of Denver actually don't want it, and so there's been various petitions to have it taken down, because they say that at night it looks scary and demonic with the red eyes flashing, right? And that they don't want their city to be represented by this scary horse with flashing eyes, right? And
only they'll just represent it with the swastika from the air.
Only the swastika and the gargoyles, but no demonic horse. It's like, oh, we can deal with those, but please, the demonic horse, no.
Get that horse out of there.
Yeah. And if you remember, during 2010, just before the Gulf oil spill, they put Anubis in there as well. There was another god of death, and there was this big statue. All of a sudden, because there was some show in Denver of Egyptian artifacts, they shipped from Egypt this big statue of Anubis, the one of the gods of death, and they stuck it right in front of the entrance of the Denver airport. So this Denver airport is being used as almost like storytelling showpiece, which they do, by the way. This is part of how they tell the story about what they're doing. It's also part of the ritual that they do, is to stage symbolically the events that they are cooking, right? So for a while there was the Anubis Egyptian statue of death in Denver to symbolize the fact that death was coming to the United States through the whole Gulf oil type deal, which was then hushed during the summer of 2010, and it's not quite clear, because nobody talks about it anymore, what that whole deal actually created for people, not just because of the oil that was coming out of the ground under the ocean, but also because of all the corexit, highly toxic corexit that was sprayed in that area. And so, there are reports still of people that are getting sick, of various kinds of illnesses in the area, but it stopped being top news, and it kind of just went away, right? There was also fish that were dying, there was also plants that were dying, there was all sorts of stuff that was going on, but then, we have very little information from then on, because the kind of news about it became yesterday's news, right? And that was another death ritual of some kind, right, that was going on at the time. And so going back to the Denver airport and the dark horse that represents death, and it's a demonic kind of death, right? That is the symbolism that they have been pushing in the first half of the year. And then this summer, they have been pushing the Isis symbolism and the Hecate symbolism. Isis being a symbol of magic and manifestation in some ways, and the Hecate being the symbol of death. And again, I'm going to say that whenever I talk about this, I get emails from people that tell me, oh, but Isis is great, I use Isis for this and I use Isis for that, and Hecate is great, I use this for that, and you don't understand pagan or Wiccan applications of this stuff. And so I'm just going to say that it doesn't matter that there is a good Isis, and it doesn't matter that there is a good Hecate, and in some ways it may be that these Isis and Hecate don't exist at all, and that they're just thought constructs that are used symbolically. And this is more and more where I'm what I'm feeling about it. It's like they're telling you a story, and to tell you the story they're using certain archetypes and thought forms and symbols, right? Whether these beings actually exist or not in some ways is irrelevant. That the story in their story and the story that they are telling, these deities have certain meanings and symbolic representations, okay? And they are part of a story that is being told. And the story that was being told during the summer was that there was some preparation of some kind of death ritual through the Ice Bucket Challenge and through the invocation of Hecate, right? Or the energy that symbolically attached to Hecate. And we were talking about, well, maybe they're preparing for a big war, because if they're preparing for a big war, then there can be this big sacrifice of people, and it could be the big death ritual that is coming. They've been telling us from the beginning that with the dark horse that some kind of death ritual is coming through, or death event is coming through. But now we have Ebola. And what could be more of a blood ritual than Ebola? You know?
Apart from people who would spontaneously explode into blood, spattering everybody inside and infecting everybody with death.
Yes.
And how about slipping one of them home? Bring them home on an airplane, just a regular airplane. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You know, sneeze. No, you sneeze. Let's go. Let's put that in the air conditioning.
That's right. And go visit all your friends first.
That's right.
Come to the air
hug your family. Yay!
Yeah, go see people in schools, and and also, how did this guy even make it to the United States from Liberia? A friend of mine actually was doing research on where this guy came from. A girlfriend of mine in Liberia, and she was saying, these people make like $2 a day. How did this guy manage to get a $3,000, $4,000 return ticket to the United States at a moment's notice while being sick? And he got a visa, which is not easy. Somebody bought him this ticket, right? Somebody put this dude on the plane. And I think somebody also might have hired him a driver and drove him around everywhere he could possibly go. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And he probably wore a suit.
That's right. So these are all conjectures, obviously. We're just kind of making this up. But this is usually how the playbook goes, right? Somehow this guy got on a plane and he had a ticket to come to the United States and to come back in October. And, would you be able to buy a $4,000 ticket right now?
I can buy a $4 ticket.
Exactly. So, you know, and I'm not saying that people cannot have money to do stuff, because they can, but, you know, it's worth looking into that. It's worth looking into, how did this guy get his funding to come to the United States? Was he independently wealthy? Did somebody give him the money? Do you know what I mean? How did he actually manage to do it, right? And I'm sure that there's going to be many people out there that are going to follow all these trails, because by now we have a research community that is really strong, and we all feed off of each other, and we get little pieces from each other. And I'm sure that very soon everybody will, the story behind this will be really clear, right?
I think this is the difference of today. Is, all right, we were talking about Kerry before. Now, Kerry was there, and she had her dad and her other military contacts, and she saw what was going on when she was growing up and was able to talk about it. And found a way to make internet work that way, to make internet radio. Now a lot of us have discovered how to make internet radio, and that's one of my things, personal, is that I'm into making internet radio for people. So I have and will continue to be somebody who will facilitate people going out on the air and telling their story, because this is how we beat them. This is how we win. This is how we've already won, because the cat is out of the bag. So they cannot use the only way they can pull off a false flag if it's completely in secret. And now we're able to remote view into them and bust their secrets before they can even do it. So that's stopped a lot of things happening, I believe, this year.
I believe that is true, and I actually believe that is how H1N1 was stopped, because everybody that was anti-vaccines and that could see through the vaccine agenda. And it was not all for the same reasons. As I say, some people, it was just purely a health angle. They were not thinking, the nanochip or whatever, do you know what I mean? But there was a lot of different people that, for a lot of different reasons, decided that this vaccine was a bad idea, so it didn't happen. And if you go and watch the last episode of the first season of V, which was just before Christmas of 2009, right? The V for Visitors, that was the remake of the 80s series about the reptilians.
Awesome show. My wife reminded me of one of those early reptilian ones. He was very hot, very tall and hot, and really, really intensely hot, and like really in your face kind of handsome kind of thing. Anyway, sorry, I just anyway.
That's okay. Well, they made a remake, right, in 2009 of the
with Morena Baccarat as the V. She was the Ori, leader of the Ori in Stargate, and awesome. She's got such a long neck. She looks alien. Her neck is as long as her head. She looks really alien, and I think they get her for that. She's got very broadly spaced eyes, and and anyway, go on. Listen. So she
in that series, that was a very interesting series to watch in real time. I watched it as it was coming up, right?
Yeah, me too.
And it was always paralleling something that was happening right in real time on the ground in the world, right? But you would only know what it was paralleling if you were one of us. Like, normal people would probably not see any of it. Do you know what I mean? But they were tackling very controversial kind of issues, and they were basically telling the story of a dark force behind the scenes manipulating things and sounding all very nice and sweety and helpful, and but actually with a very dark, sinister agenda of manipulating and taking over the planet, but they were doing it in a very covert way. Does it ring any bells? Right? This story. And this particular series, there's a resistance that starts forming, and the resistance are people that have seen that these people behind the mask are actually a reptilian alien species which are very ferocious and anything but benign, and that don't want anything but to enslave humanity. And so they create this kind of fifth column, and this fifth column then becomes an agent of resistance, and they sometimes have to play kind of like a double role so that they look as if they're playing the game, but they're not, and they're gathering information and they're talking to each other and so on. In the December episode of that particular first season of that show, the resistance uncovers a plot to vaccinate the population en masse with some kind of thing that was going to, that attached itself to particular kinds of DNA. And that then, I can't remember what the consequences were going to be, but it was like really bad, right? And so they discovered this thing, and eventually they crash into the laboratory, and they manage to blow up all of the vaccine stock, and then that particular, the show went on a break for 3 months after that.
Yeah, that was one of the, was that the time when they had that funny strike and like all the TV just fell to bits?
That's right. So it didn't come back until March of the next year, right? So there was like a 4-month hiatus or something, and they knew that at the time they knew that this was going to there was going to be this break, and at the end of that episode, it was basically, they said, well, the resistance has won this round and we will see what happens next. Well, right around this time, it was the time in which some kind of announcement came out in the real world saying that, oh, well, the H1N crisis obviously was not that severe, so we're now going to stop trying to force everybody to have Tamiflu. And one of the reasons, Tamiflu being the vaccine for the H1N1, and one of the reasons which they did that was because the whole Operation H1N1 had failed. So in the real world, the Operation H1N1 failed, and in the movie world, in V, the resistance won the round against the vaccines. And that show was actually largely funded by the Ministry of Defense. If you go and have a look at the funding of that particular show, you follow the money trail, Ministry of Defense was behind it. So it was one of those either predictive programming type shows, or one of the shows in which they spill the beans and tell you what is going on because they have to, right? Somewhere they have to tell you, and very often they'll put it into a format where you would not really recognize what it is that you're being told anyway, right? But they have to spill the beans somewhere, so it feels that is part of where they did it. And so now, coming back to today, we've got another quote-unquote epidemic. We have a announcement. There was both an announcement on the BBC website, news website, and on Time magazine website, that usually it takes years to concoct a vaccine for something like Ebola, but all of the scientist teams are working against the clock, and we will have, they were saying that, the vaccine will be ready in record time, and it will be safe because they found a way to test it, blah, 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 and so on. Now, I don't know if they've already done it and the vaccine is already out there, but that is the next thing that is going to come. Watch the vaccine campaign start soon. Okay?
I'd be interested in being a printer, or looking at the printers. The people who print the packaging and the boxes that these medicines go into.
Yes.
Will have to have been informed of their contents. The box has to reflect what's on the inside, hasn't it? So that has to be pretty well planned in advance. If you can't just knock out boxes. You can't just knock out big packages, and they all say, if it's like Tamiflu, it'll have Tamiflu flashed all over the boxes. Won't it?
Yes,
it's a product.
True.
So
true. And
these things will, there are ways of chasing the trail, and just by dropping those into the meme today, people can search along these lines.
Absolutely. And also, I'm just quoting here from an article. Let me see if I can find it in real time. And it said something. Let me just check 1 second again. All right. This is from an article on World Truth TV, right? And it says that the plot here gets interesting when you realize that the patent for Ebola was awarded to the United States government just 4 years ago in 2010. Well, isn't the timing of that interesting? Because the H1N1 flop was kind of announced in December 2009, right? And in 2010, hops along the patent for Ebola, right? So, astonishingly, the patent claims U.S. government ownership over all variants of the Ebola virus, which share 70% or more of their protein sequence described in the patent, blah, 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 a nucleotide sequence of at least 70% 90% identity to the sequence ID, whatever. I don't even understand what this means, but basically it means that they have all of the variants of Ebola and they own them all, right? And furthermore, the patent also claims ownership over any and all Ebola viruses which are weakened or killed, meaning the United States is literally claiming ownership over all possible Ebola vaccines. This, from a financial point of view, also entails that the US government can demand royalties on the Ebola vaccines. Okay? Which is kind of weird. And
royalties.
Yes.
Royalties. Now, isn't that an interesting little concept? You know, that they're creaming a little bit off every time someone gets a jag. So it's in their interests that there are a lot of people who get the jag, who are potentially infected. This is the jag for people who are infected or not infected?
It doesn't matter. Anything that has to do with Ebola of any kind, both the variations of the virus or anything made to counteract the virus, is basically you are under US patent.
Well, there you go. That's what I was saying before about the doctors, about how a doctor gets fined if he doesn't administer the correct medicine according to the book for the particular disease. So that's how it all links together, that you're locked in. You know, no matter, I've got a cold. No, you haven't. You've got Ebola. Here, have some of this.
That's right. It's the symptoms of Ebola, aside from the, bleeding out from every orifice ones, could be symptoms of anything, the other ones, right? Like there's some super symptoms, but then there's some other symptoms that literally could be anything, right? Now, also, on the same article that I'm reading, it says that simultaneously as the beginning of the Ebola outbreak in Africa, the United States government is now operating under an Obama Executive Order number 13674, signed into effect on July 31st, 2014, which is this summer, right? Which allows the U.S. federal government to arrest and quarantine any person who shows symptoms of an infectious disease.
An infectious disease. Any infectious, which was it's like colds,
Yes.
What else is infectious? Well, measles and mumps and rubella. So basically, you should arrest all the children because they're just carriers of every single filthy thing on the planet. We basically, the human race is basically a kind of absorbent sponge that is being wiped across the surface of the earth to try and counteract the oil that they've kind of spilt everywhere.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry for that image. Because we've been talking about having this weird feeling today, maybe this is it. Maybe this is like the world is realizing, oh my God, the human race is just a cloth that's being used to suck up all the poisons and the toxins. We start with the humans, babies, with a evil mercury and vaccines and germs, just shove it all in at 3 days old, just see, that one didn't survive. Well, this is how the world is, There's a school of hard knocks from the moment you bloody wake up.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the truth is, and I have experienced this in my own body multiple times, and maybe I was supposed to so that I can be really sensitive to the issue. You know how sometimes we wear an issue, right? I started being not very well around 2004, so about 10 years ago, and I have had on-off issues with my health since. And I'm truly convinced that one of the reasons for which this particular body is, does what it does is because, it's we live in a toxic soup. We just do. It's like, add to that stress, right? And stress of various kinds. Some of it can even just be economical stress, because none of us have any money either. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of us also are not particularly, wealthy. So you
wealthy. Yeah, well, yeah. That's not the word, is it? It's not like even being able to make ends meet,
No, it's like find the quarters in your purse to get the potatoes that you need for the soup for tonight. Right?
That's right.
This year has been a bit better for me from that point of view, but I've had 5 years of that really intense, close to the wire kind of stuff, right? But I think in general, the being kept into this survival mode, which a lot of us have been into for a while, but especially since 2008 with the, provoked economic collapse, and with all the banking system going crazy and all that story, of 2008. And if you add to that the fact that life in general is stressful, it's been created to be stressful, and that we're bombarded with toxicity. We're bombarded with, especially for the women, from hormonally active substances that are in the food chain. Pesticides have hormonally active substances in them. Growth hormone is inside all of the meats and eggs and milk, and you can find ones that don't have it, but they're still, you can avoid some of it once you're aware of it, but it's still stuff that you have to wear. All of the plastics, and by plastics, it's not just about eating plastic, but it's about eating things that are wrapped into plastic, or that are put in a plastic bag, or that are drinks that are in a plastic mug that heats up, and even water sometimes it's in plastic bottles that kind of heat up and leach. Do you know what I mean? Then there's the poisons that are in the water anyway. Fluoride is a anti-thyroid molecule because it replaces iodine inside of the thyroid. So when the body is trying to make thyroid hormone, instead of finding iodine, it finds fluoride instead. They put bromide in the bread, so if you're eating bread, instead of having iodine, that is what they used to use to bleach flour, now you're taking in bromide, which is a highly toxic substance that also is a iodine competitor for the thyroid receptors inside the thyroid. So there's an epidemic of hypothyroid issues, some of which are caused by iodine deficiency, but some of them are caused by an overload of fluoride, bromide, and chlorine, who are all iodine competitors, who are basically getting into the thyroid and not allowing the thyroid to produce what it needs to make thyroid hormone, right? So then on top of that, we have a genetically modified wheat. Even if they don't say that it's genetically modified, it is. And in fact, it seems that normal wheat does not exist anymore. I was reading somewhere that now a lot of the wheat plants are several feet tall, when it used to be 1 foot tall, and it's now a super wheat, right? And this super wheat has bad kind of gluten in it that is very bad for you. It creates problems in your gut, which then create leaky gut, which then these molecules go out into the bloodstream. The immune system looks at it and goes, "Oh, a foreign enemy, let's attack." And guess what? This particle is very similar to the cells in the thyroid. So the immune system goes after the gluten in the bloodstream and attacks the thyroid at the same time. So people that have issues with their gut have also often autoimmune kind of thyroid issues, right? So, is there any wonder that people are not very well? We are being bombarded from every single angle, and I can see even just from my practice and people that come to see me, they are probably 50% of people that I talk to will tell me that they also have some form of chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue or thyroid issue or energy issue, and some of these are because we're going through a lot of transformation at the planetary level, but some of them are just because we are under assault by bad chemicals and hormonally disruptive substances that over a period of time, in a cumulative way, added with stress, are weakening the immune system, they're weakening the glandular system in the body, and so health is becoming very hard to maintain. Now, if you then throw in things like vaccines and fabricated viruses like this, really, it becomes, it's very easy to get rid of the humans. If in some ways we are very sturdy because we should be gone already. Right?
I know, right?
We're sturdy. We're like soldiering on and doing our stuff, even if we are not feeling all that great. Do you know what I mean? The humans are still there trying to survive, and we're figuring stuff out. So the health activism part is actually very important. There's a lot of people out there that are now doing a lot of work in terms of how to detoxify, how to rebalance the body, diets that work, diets that don't work, and so on, right? One of the issues, though, is that doing all of that can be a 24-hour job. Like if you have to cook all of your food or make all of your food and, and be absolutely careful about what you're doing, that takes it takes a lot of commitment, and in some ways it's a job in itself, right? So it doesn't go very well with the stressful survival kind of lifestyle that a lot of us are forced into. And I say forced into because this is how the world is set up. It's set up so that it's stressful. It's stressful even for the people that are doing well, because they're made to work really hard and don't have enough free time and wind down time. If you have a really high powered job, you're often very stressed out for a very different set of reasons, right? So there you go.
Katie.
Yes.
Let's reduce our stress by a little bit of 1960s music, when everything was fine, when things were clear cut, everything was in black and white, even the TV. So, and now, since then we've had the Babylon 5 and we've had Fall, right? But one of my favourite bands was The Shadows.
Okay.
And do you remember The Shadows?
I do remember The Shadows. Right,
but they front now discovered paedophile Cliff Richard, but they were a great band, a great guitar player. But this song is called My Resistance is Low. But after that, because this song is only less than 2 minutes long, I'm going to put Can't Buy Me Love as well. So let's put them into the mill of past life. What?
Some better quality Mind Control music.
Yeah. Well, back in the day when Mind Control had a good tune.
That's right.
Yeah, back on the air now.
Yeah.
You can't buy me love, but it does help. Because that's what it's about. This is the whole stressy thing, isn't it? It's a stressor that's created to make us stressed, because we're told that we're going to get beaten up if we don't give this money, and we don't get money unless we work as a slave. So that turns us into a slave by being threatened to be beaten up, and so on. Yeah. Welcome to planet Earth.
A lot of men are told that they or feel, for other mind control reasons, that if they don't have money, that they can't get a woman, and there's a lot of women out there that will not settle with a guy with no money. So, you know, it does get into the buy me love thing. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So money, in fact, does buy you love. Well, I don't know. What does it? It doesn't buy you anything. Buy you. What is it really?
Yeah. Buys you. Yeah. So, I'm going to go back to Executive Order 13674. Okay.
Oh, I love it when you talk numbers.
Yay. Lovely Executive Order, July 31st, 2014. All right. So it said about the fact that people that can be arrested or quarantined if they're showing signs of an infectious disease. And the executive order also allows federal agents to forcibly arrest and quarantine anybody showing symptoms of severe acute respiratory syndrome, diseases that are associated with fever and signs and symptoms of pneumonia or other respiratory illnesses, diseases that are capable of being transmitted from person to person. I think that's what infectious means, right? And that either are causing or have the potential to cause a pandemic, or upon infection are highly likely to cause mortality or serious morbidity if not properly controlled. Now, isn't it interesting and timely that this came out in July 31st, 2014, just a couple of months before we had some infected person from Liberia come over to the United States, right? So they're all ready good to go. And it also says here that legally anybody that carries Ebola is a possession of the US government because the US owns the patent of the Ebola.
How very convenient for them.
Okay, so you're carrying, or at least they own your blood.
Do you need to deal with that?
No, I'm not dealing.
Okay, no dealing.
Let it deal in. It's going to deal into itself. Right.
So yeah.
I don't know who this is. I have a psychic antenna for the phone. I always know who's calling, even if I don't look at it. Right.
But so you had caller ID before people had caller ID.
Yeah, I actually have a phone that does not have caller ID on it. So I've had a lot of. I have a phone that is like 20 years old or something. Right? So you can't actually see who's calling, but I know it, right? So anyway, very
Ebola. The American government owns your blood.
Yeah, because the Ebola is in it, and they own the Ebola, so they own your blood, right? And so if they want to detain your blood with you around it, right? Technically speaking, they can do that even just because of the patent thing. Now, I don't know how true this is, but I think it's just an interesting little twist of legal that this guy is pointing out. I doubt that it would actually really stand in a court of law. But
you know, this is a really interesting aspect, and something that's been kind of snuck up on it, that you can own patent on things that are... well, I mean, they've been doing this ever since the idea of cloning, haven't they? You know, taking DNA. If they make something out of your DNA, does it belong to you or does it belong to them? And how does that happen? Right. You know, how can they lay claim on it and we can't?
Absolutely. And in fact, in the same article, it says that, do you remember the massive medical controversy around the BRCA1 gene tied to breast cancer in women, which, by the way, is the same one that Angelina Jolie supposedly has, and she had both of her breasts removed so that she didn't have to deal with cancer at a later time, which was a barbaric thing to do. But that's the gene, right? The BRCA1 gene. And a corporation claimed patent ownership over the gene, and then they used that patent to shut down all other research, testing, or diagnoses of breast cancer related to that gene. To this day, nearly 20% of the... And remember that this BRCA1 gene is part of the human DNA. It's not that it grows up in a field or something, or that they make it in a lab. It's Some people have it, but it's in their own DNA, right? So this corporation owns the BRCA1 gene patent, and as a result of that, has been able to shut down other research, testing, and diagnoses associated to this particular gene. And it says, to date, nearly 20% of the human genome has been claimed as owned by corporations, universities, and the government. So that means 20% of at least the physical level of the DNA is actually owned by companies, including government. Okay? So it's your DNA. You may have it in you, a piece of this, but actually the patent of it is owned by somebody else. So they own 20% of your DNA, right? Of the physical part of the DNA, because there's a lot of DNA that is not physical, which is what people talk about when they talk about 12-stranded DNA, 24-stranded DNA. Those extra strands are not physical. They don't show up in a lab, okay? Stuart Swelder had a piece on YouTube saying, see, you can only have 2 physical strands of DNA, so this whole multi-stranded DNA is a whole load of bullshit. And I have to disagree with him because the other strands are on other levels, on other dimensional levels. And they actually correspond to energy bodies. And so when certain energy bodies switch on, the corresponding DNA usually switches on first so that the energy body can descend. And I've been through this process in my own life many times. Usually you feel sick as a dog before this happens because it creates changes. But it's a very real process. It's just a multidimensional process rather than a physical one, okay? But at the physical level, 20% of the human genome of the 2 strands that are physical are owned by corporations, research universities, or government. Which I think is astonishing that it's even allowed to be this way, right? And so they own your blood, and they own, if you have Ebola in it, but they own part of your genome anyway, right? Anyway, this article that I thought was very good is on worldtruth.tv, Ebola outbreak, an impossibly rapid vaccine response clearly scripted. You can look it up, okay? That's the title of it. So going back to Denver for a second, because I wanted to tie back to the dark horse in the ritual, the dark horse of the airport of Denver. And as we know, they use all of these different symbols to tell you a story. So they've been telling you a story for a while that is tied to the dark horse, that is tied to death, with various symbolisms, that there's going to be all this death coming through. With death rituals all over the place, blood rituals all over the place, right? All year we've been exposed to this. And even as far back as February, I was tying it into the horse at Denver, because that was clearly what was showing up in the Katy Perry performance of the Grammys. And so I pulled back up the murals at the Denver airport, because aside from having a demonic horse at the entrance of the airport and having the airport that is shaped like a swastika, and the underground bases in the airport, and the gargoyles that are coming out of the the suitcases, and then there's a Freemasonic sign at the beginning of the entrance of the airport with a big compass on it, and it actually says on the thing, it says on the compass, on the sign, it says Denver International Airport. The time capsule beneath the stone contains messages and memorabilia for the people of Colorado to be opened in 2094. Who knows what's in there? It's like, surprise, we killed you all.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
That's right. Remember when we all wiped you all out between 2010 and 2035?
That was us. That was us. Welcome. It was the Bayer Corporation, Baxter.
Here's the solution to the riddle. Okay. And literally, that's what it says on the stone. It says, this time capsule beneath the stone contains a message and memorabilia to the people of Colorado of 2094. who writes something like that? Anyway. Then also it says below that, okay, below the sign, nice compass with a big G in it, Freemasonic symbol. The beginning of the airport, March 19, 1994. And then to the side, it says, the most worshipful is the dedication, right? Dedication capstone laid by the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge F and AM of Colorado and jurisdiction something Grandmaster. Okay? And on the other side it says the most worshipful Grand Lodge of AF and AM of Colorado Benjamin whatnot Grandmaster. Benjamin Bell Grandmaster. Okay? So it's basically saying that...
Probably one of Alexander Graham Bell's descendants.
That's right. That's right. And I can't see the other one because there's a big arrow on top of it on the picture that I'm looking, so I can't actually see the name of the other person. But both of them are most worshipful Grandmasters, okay? So it's dedicated to these two on the Denver International Air Dedication capstone, okay? And then under that, on the capstone, which basically is just a big stone with stuff written on it, it says New World Airport Commission, contributors Martin Mapieta Aeronautics, and then it's so small I can't read.
Here, use mine.
Yeah, it's like small, you know what I mean? But it's kind of names of people. Architects, Zimmerman, something, do you know what I mean? So there's names, but you can go and find it online, find the Denver Airport capstone. This thing is at the entrance of the airport, and it says here, the person that put this together says, nobody really knows who paid for the Denver Airport construction, besides the fact that this dedication stone says it's covering a time capsule dedicated to the people of Colorado. It also says that the airport was paid for by the New World Airport Commission. However, the New World Airport Commission does not exist. There is no such record of this commission, right? Well, I'm sure they do exist. It's just nobody bothered to sign it up as a. You know what I mean?
It's a company that actually exists below Denver Airport. That's where the company is. the whole commission bit. That's because everybody's committed. You know, it's the committee. Yeah, they're committed and they're under the ground. Away from everybody, and they've been living there for years, and there's a whole bunch of subterranean humans who have been siphoning off our money and our work and our energy, which is why we feel so shit.
That's right.
And,
meanwhile,
actually, you could say, Katie, that in a way, they're demons and they're working in hell.
They are.
Because they're influencing us from hell, from the underground bases. They got all the lines and the connections to satellites and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're just playing their beams on us, tormenting us. Throwing drones flying around. We all, in Forest, I saw a chemtrail plane. It's unusual, not unusual for you, but it's unusual for us. And the other day I was out and I was with my girlfriend and we were seeing this chemtrail plane circling the town 3 times. I got photos of the thing. Everybody was looking up, photographing these buggers. And we've all had and feeling terrible. So, who knows? Yes.
Well, it's part of the big poisoning. Like, they're trying from every angle, right, to do what they're trying to do. So, if you go inside of the airport, then there's a series of murals, right? And this is actually, I've always been fascinated by this series of murals because obviously they put a lot of energy into making these murals, right? And murals is another way in which often these people tell a story. There's a series of murals inside of the Bank of America Central Command in Charlotte that tells a story also of subjugation of the human race, okay? And that has the Masonic boy and so on. So go and have a look at that as well. Go and have a look at the a Bank of America Charlotte murals, and you will find another story similar to this one. It's slightly different, but it has a similar kind of energy to it, okay? And in this one, the first mural has on it a guy that looks like a German World War II soldier. He has a big sword that is like one of those, what do you call those swords that are kind of like fat and round?
Like a scimitar?
There you go.
No, not a scimitar. It's not a scimitar.
No, it's exactly that.
Is it? Because I thought a scimitar... All right, okay. All right, on you go.
So it's a fat, wide sword, right? And that is often... like death, in the traditional depiction of death, carries the sickle, right? So it's like the round sword of death, right?
A saber with a much curved blade. Sorry, a saber with a much curved blade having the edge on the convex side. In use among Mohammedans, especially the Arabs and Persians. The Mohammedans, yes.
Yes, so it's one of those. And the soldier, is also wearing a mask that looks like a very horror kind of mask, but it's obviously a gas mask, but it's a kind of demonic gas mask, okay? And he's also has a gun with a blade on the end, like the bayonets used to have in World War One, and he's holding that in the other side. So there's some World War One and World War Two references here. The guy is wearing a gas mask. That, at the time when I first looked at it, it made me think about the Holocaust, right? Because there was gas involved in the concentration camps and stuff, right? Now, the curved blade of masked soldier is poking and killing a white dove, right? So the white dove is a symbol of peace, so obviously peace is going out of the window. And then to the side of poked dove and soldier man are children that are laying on the floor looking sickly. And then there is a procession of people that are grey and in the background that look almost as if they're in some kind of exodus, right? And then going into the guy is behind him is the very vapor-looking rainbow, but it's not a rainbow. It's more like a vapor trail, right? So this would make you think that there's something that involves everybody that is like vapor-like a chemical or whatever. This guy is wearing a gas mask, so he doesn't breathe it, but everybody else is breathing it. And the people are dying, and the dove of peace is, this guy with a gas mask is not friendly. He's got a big bayonet in his hands, and he's killing the dove of peace, and he's carrying the sword of death, so it's not that he's a particularly friendly dude. And he obviously looks very much like a Nazi-type soldier, and I've already researched before that the Denver airport is very connected to the Nazi faction. So it's kind of interesting. So this is almost like the manifesto of the Nazi faction of the New World Order, okay? And if you remember even listening to James Casbolt, when he did a bases thing a few years ago, not one of the recent ones where Miles seems to just want to throw stones at him every 2 minutes, right? But one of the ones that was still about the information and not about James Casbolt as a person, who obviously is mind controlled, so he switches between alters, and some of his alters are nasty, right? And but in one of the ones in which he was still coherent and Miles was still doing interviews that had to do with the information, he was saying that the underground bases had 2 levels, and one of the levels was owned by a Nazi faction and one was owned by a Zionist faction, right? Zionist not meaning Jewish, Zionist meaning the New World Order faction of the Jewish thing or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the Khazarians.
The ones that are playing with the New World Order, right? We have people of our own that are playing with the New World Order. Everybody has their own. Do you know what I mean? group that plays with them, right? So he was saying that is often what is going down, and then we know that there's from who was it that was talking about the deeper bases? Because very often there's like 1, 2 levels, and then there's more levels underneath, right?
And then there's the levels that the humans don't go to.
Exactly.
That's when it starts getting very strange, and time is weird, and you spend an hour going down, and it was only a minute. Anyway, long story.
Because they go down even 32 levels, right? There was, I think it was actually Preston Nichols that was talking about the underground levels of Montauk. And when he was talking about that in an interview that you can find on YouTube that is dated 1992, so a really old interview.
But these things go down, these things go back years and years, since before, like Lincoln and all those guys, and Washington, they're all hanging out down in those things, and who knows what slaves and soldiers they had working down there, tunneling them out.
Well, and they may have been in place since times of Atlantis. We don't know. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure that they've added some.
Oh yeah, like that guy who bought a house on the top of a hill and found he had a basement, and it turned out that there was an entire city underneath his house on the top, inside this mountain, and the house was like the only thing that you could get into it. But. Yeah,
exactly. So there are. Bases that have to do with us, and then if you go further down, there's bases that have to do with other beings that we are not particularly even all the way I believe that we don't actually understand all of that picture yet. And in fact, when I was saying that we have uncovered about 85% of the conspiracy, right? I think that we have uncovered most of what is above the ground, right? But there's still some stuff that is really truly out of view that we haven't quite understood yet all the way, right?
And hell goes real deep.
Yes, it does. And so anyway, but one of the levels of these underground things apparently belongs to the Nazi faction, and Denver is the poster child manifesto place for that faction. Okay, now once you get off of the first mural, right? So the first mural is telling you a story of death, lots of people dying. There's this vapor kind of looking like a rainbow in the sky. It's kind of interesting that it's rainbow-like, because rainbow is one of the things that is used in mind control, right? Like Over the Rainbow, the Wizard of Oz, and rainbow symbolism. That's very MK Ultra, okay? So the rainbow in the sky may also be telling you that there's some aspect of mind control that is being used here, which there is, because they are manipulating the whole thing, right? So then the next thing that you see after that, let me just find it, I'm looking. Okay, the next thing that you see is a city in the background. This is the second mural. There's a second city in the background, and then there's the trees that are burning. There's you see that a lot of stuff is burning, and then there's a bird in a cage, and a penguin in a cage, and another strange bird in a cage, and the dolphins are dying, and the turtles and the whales, and there's a dead leopard, and so on. So they're basically telling you a lot of stuff is going extinct, and that the animal kingdom is becoming very scarce, right? That there's some kind of environmental disaster here that is worldwide, that has to do with flames, and then there's these 3 tombs, and in one tomb there's a white girl, in the second tomb there's like a South American kind of looking woman, and in the other tomb there's an African looking woman. And then overlooking the tombs there are children of all different colors and races. One looks very Mayan, another one looks kind of Indian, then there's another one that looks African, then there's a kind of white European looking kid, do you know what I mean? And the children are watching the death of the animals, the burning of the cities, the extinction of various species, and the death of the 3 women in the tomb. Okay? So stage 1, big death everywhere, and the stage 2 is a big death of a different kind, which obviously takes out several species and several races. Then the third mural, everybody is giving their arms, their swords, their rifles, their bayonets, and even the curved scimitar, the blade of death. They're wrapping it up in all of the flags of the world, and they are giving all of these things, weapons. They're giving it to the white German boy. And the white German boy is interesting because, and they're all children, by the way. The adults are all dead in this story. There's no adults left. There's only kids. And they're all happy. They all look in color. And there's words of peace around, but they're all giving all of their weapons to the little German boy. The little German boy being significant because, one, he's like the Aryan boy that is associated with the Nazi faction. Two, because he is the exact same boy that is in the murals of the Bank of America murals. And in the Bank of America murals, this boy that looks identical to this one, right, is actually a Masonic boy that has with him the plans of the Masonry, the Freemasons for the world. So I think it's really interesting that there's a link up between these two sets of murals, because the little boy that is in charge of everything is the same, right? And in one of them, he's the little German Nazi boy, and in the other one, he's the Masonic boy. They're probably exactly the same thing, because ultimately it's a Freemasonic agenda, okay?
So this is the widow's son.
Sorry?
The legendary widow's son.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting that there's no adults. They're all children. And the children are all happy, and they're all singing songs of peace, and they are giving to the German boy not just the weapons, but also their national flags. So one bunch of weapons is covered with a UK flag and Irish flag. Another one has the American flag and the French flag. Then another one has the Mexican flag. Another one of these bunches of weapons has some other flag on it. I'm not so great on flags, so some of these I'm not recognizing. Okay?
So what you're looking at is the process of killing off all the adults, so that only the children who have managed to survive because they received the vaccine when they were children, they're the only ones that are supposed to survive this thing, and that everybody's going to because there's no adults left. All the adults will then just come and collect the children, and they'll all be brought up in this terrible Nazi oppressive regime, and brainwashed into feeling happy.
That's the right word, is brainwashed, because they don't look unhappy. They look happy. They're playing the guitar. They're singing songs, but at the same time they're giving up their weapons and they're giving up their national identity. This is the birth of the New World Order, right?
Yes.
Because they're giving away all of their national flags, and they're giving it away willingly because there's no adult there telling them about the New World Order. They're just doing what they're told, as children do. They're trusting, and they're giving up all of their national identities. And they give them all to the little German boy. And the little German boy is holding a hammer. I'm sure that there's a symbolic meaning behind the hammer. The hammer is actually one of the symbols of communism. In the hammer and sickle, do you remember?
That's right.
Marxist communism, the Russian Marxist communism, that was the sickle and the hammer, right? So I just figured it out. It's so he's hammering the sickle, and he has because the sickle is in the picture, and he has the hammer in his head. So this is obviously going to be some kind of, one world communist type venture, right? Now, interestingly enough, in the background of all the children, there is the rainbow again. And to me, the rainbow in this context is a symbol of mind control, right? It's come over the rainbow. It's like a hypnotic induction, mind control type thing. Then below the children, the two doves are now alive. They're no longer being killed, and there is the residue of the suit of the German soldier that is below all of that, but it's deteriorating and decaying, meaning that all of this new world is created on the it was created from the German soldier and the death and the sickle and the gas mask and all the rest of it, but now that the new world has been pulled together and all the children are giving up their national identities, there is no need for the German soldier anymore. They can pretend to be all at peace. And then the final one is a weird one, because all of the children of the world are now together and they're all happy and dancing, and there's all of these new species of animals, new birds, new things, and in the middle everybody is looking at a new plant that looks like a plant that doesn't exist. So it's almost like a genetically engineered world where new stuff is being created, but it kind of feels weird. But it's still the same theme. All of the children, they're a tiny bit older, they're all dressed in fancy colours, and they're all happy with all of their new species of plants and animals on the depopulated world, right? And that's the end of it. That's the Denver murals, you know, and they're telling you a story, and they're telling you a story of a new world order that is born on the ashes of some horrible, either chemical or biological warfare type event that then turns into another event that gets rid of everybody, and then everybody gives up their national identities and their weapons and become one in this new kind of like Brave New World type of world where everybody's happy to be enslaved. Okay? That's it. That's my piece for today.
And on that note, let's play some cheery music. Oh, the lighter side of planeticide. I don't know. Oh, wow. Look, it's, maybe I'll to play, Dissolved Girl. It's one of my favourites.
Well, in the last couple of minutes that we have before we go to goodbye, yes, right? Because we're done after this, right? Yeah. It is important to remember, and I say this almost in every show, that just because there is an agenda, it doesn't mean that that agenda is going to pan out. Just because there is a plan, it doesn't mean that that plan is going to actualize. And that one of the reasons for which we expose the plan is so that we can counteract the plan. And you can counteract the plan in many ways. Don't take the vaccine, if there is one. Spread information about all of these kind of things. The last round didn't work because nobody took the vaccine, and this time the virus is more scary, but you can still not take the vaccine. You know what I mean? It's important to not capitulate to the fear and to the agenda. Also, remember that we have multidimensional friends in high places. We can ask for some of these viruses to be neutralized. I know that there are some people that will frown at that and will say, it's a load of rubbish. But if you're one of the people that does not think this is a load of rubbish and that think that you can energetically influence reality, which you can, start every day to intend that these viruses are disabled. See the viruses not transmitting. See the viruses not working. See the nasty stuff inside of vaccines, not happening. See wherever these vaccines are stored. Imagine that they're kind of like, a big flood comes along and wipes sends all the vaccines in a river. You know what I mean? You can start to do some what is called active intention energy work, for the planet Earth. Always premise it with only if this is for the highest good of all, and you're good to go. You can start doing some manifesting work of your own, for the planet that can counteract the bad manifesting work that they're doing, right? This, in some ways, is all of these different levels at which we can do things, including boosting the immune system, taking vitamin C, and doing all of the things, eating selenium, like Brazil nuts and stuff, all of the things that you can do to actually strengthen your immune system. Teaching other people to do the same. This is a test of sovereignty, right? We have a big bad bully in the playground. Are we going to allow for the big bad bully to keep smacking us in the face? Or at some point, do we say, no, I'm sorry, but this is not happening? Do you know what I mean? So in whatever way you can in your own life, don't let the bully smack you in the face. Teach other people to not allow that either. And one of the things that I feel very strongly right now is that a lot of what is going on in this world right now is a test, an initiation and a test for humanity. Are we going to be able to rise above a certain kind of challenger and dark force? If we can, we earn the next level of living on this planet that is going to be higher frequency, wonderful, empowered living. And if we don't, we'll get another round of another 13,000 years with these guys, okay? And very often that involves some kind of planetary reboot. Every time this has happened in the past on this planet, the Atlantean, in the Atlantean time, it was a big cataclysm that wiped everybody off of the planet, and then there was a planetary reboot. Apparently there's been 4 other cycles besides that one, 5 altogether, in which there's been a planetary reboot. It may be that one of the things that is looming here as planetary reboot is literally like a pandemic, that is how it's going to go down this time. But every single time, even in Atlantis, the test was a test of consciousness, a test of power, and a test of sovereignty. And by power, I mean spiritual power of knowing that you are actually in charge of your own life, that you can create change, and that you can unite as a human consciousness to create that change. In Atlantis, it didn't work out. Too many people were distracted. People were distracted. They provided a lot of distractions, and people were distracted. And so the consciousness of the planet as a whole was not proactive enough to create the change that was required. So most of the Atlantean civilization was destroyed, right? But there was a karmic reason for that. The people didn't do the work. We're much, much closer now to doing the work. We have all the knowledge that we need to have. What we don't have sometimes is the fortitude and the faith that we can actually create change. Because there's a lot of people that look at stuff and they feel like victims of the New World Order. Even if they know all about the New World Order, even if they can uncover all of the programs, they still go into fear and victimhood around the whole thing. And so the strength here and the test is, are we going to step out of battered spouse syndrome?
Battered spouse syndrome or Stockholm
right.
syndrome.
That's right. Are we going to step out of that, and are we going to say, okay, well, there's a lot of us, we all have our own ideas and opinions, and I really do believe that one of the strong pieces that strengthens us and that we are the most out of touch with, but it's one of our strongest weapons, but it's also one of the ones that we're most out of touch with, is a multidimensional nature. Nature that goes beyond the physical. Because on the physical plane, we are limited in what we can do. But once we understand that everything is energy, and once we understand that we can work with energy and we can manipulate energy, and once we understand that we have higher selves that also have much more knowledge and voltage than our physical selves, once we understand that we have a connection to source consciousness that we can bring in, once we understand that we can unite together and create even more voltage from that, then there truly is ways to create change. And one of the things that the New World Order over the years and centuries even has been very effective in doing has been in not only switching people off from their multidimensional nature, but to make it sound as if it's just woo-woo bull crap. Do you know what I mean? And people that talk about things like this are kind of weird. And so there's, even in the warrior movement, truth movement, there's a lot of people that have a massive distrust of anything metaphysical, of anything spiritual, of any kind of metaphysical technology, and part of that is because there's a different kind of brainwashing that has made it through into the warrior community that says that all of that is just New Age crap, right? But it isn't. It isn't New Age crap. One of the reasons for which the New World Order contaminated the beginning of a spiritual movement, and that was going to come around at this time because the consciousness on the planet is rising, so they knew it was going to come. They knew the star seeds were going to reincarnate again, right? Because we were around in Atlantis, they knew we would come back again. So they had to create a sidetrack version of the spiritual metaphysical that was going to be so silly that intelligent people were going to turn it down. Do you know what I mean?
And the other thing about it, and something that I've seen in like the last 20 years of being involved with this whole scene, is that there are people who appear very, very glitzy. We call it glamorous, and they seem to be very profound and they seem to really tune into people and understand their predicament, but they're not really they're not real gurus. They're not really qualified to say any of this stuff. They're trained. They've been infiltrating, and this is the thing. And we're starting to see these. I mean, we talk about like Kerry and everybody and all this stuff. We can now even see how their infiltration tactics work. Because there's still so many of us, and we're all watching, and we're all watching very intently.
Absolutely.
So, hang on a second, Katie.
Yes.
We're kind of at the end of the show.
Okay. Yes.
Do you want to spill over a bit, or because?
Shall we spill over like 20 minutes?
Yeah. So let's just wrap one up and there. So, say goodnight and tell everybody where to find you.
Okay, you can find me at my website katiegallanti.com or reclaimingthelight.com. And you'll just find all about me on there, and also have a YouTube channel which is also just called Katie Cosmic Essence, but you can find that on my website as well. Okay,
here we go. Good night. We'll be back.
No Borders Radio, and everbeyond.info. Be prepared to leave your belief systems behind as we go beyond teachers, beyond gurus, beyond duality, ever beyond, beyond.
October 12th, 2014, Ever Beyond Radio, Wolf Spirit Radio, everbeyond.info, reclaimingthelight.com, katiegallanti.com, katiegallanti.net, katiegallanti.cosmos, katiegallanti.galactic. You know, there is an IP system. You know, like, you know, we have this thing, you know, .co.uk, you know? Mm-hmm. We're kind of, it's like .co.uk.earth, .co.uk.earth.soul, .co.uk.soul.aldebaran, you know, etc. It goes on. And there is, and there has to be, a cosmic addressing system. And there's a cosmic galactic DNS.
Absolutely, I agree.
That's what you see in my, that's what it looks like. Anyway, so, okay, I'm just going to pull the pin out.
Yep.
And hopefully all the juice is still in there. Katie Gallanti, thank you. Carry on.
Okay, the pin, we had it into the New Age consciousness metaphysics derailing, right? And we were basically saying that, you know, there's this huge mistrust into anything spiritual and metaphysical. And I actually think that huge mistrust, it exists within the normal population for a certain set of reasons, but it's also present within the truth warrior, info warrior kind of movement as well, because people like, do I mention names here? I don't know.
You could do impressions of their voice, perhaps.
No, let's say that there's been a few teachers, right, that have been put out there that have put out teachings that say that anything that is multidimensional, or that talks about stuff that is multidimensional, is dark, and it's basically Luciferian stuff in disguise and demonic, and do you know what I mean, and all that kind of stuff. That's one set of teachings.
Really? Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, then there's another set of teachings out there that are basically saying that the whole hierarchy of beings that are on the other side of the veil, kind of thing, are all imposter beings, all of them, right, all through the food chain. And Ashayana Dean is one of the people that talks about that, right? And then there's also George Casavilas, I can never remember his name, right?
Not bad today, not bad. Cavasilis.
Was that actually right?
No. But not bad. You got the rhythm right. Cavasilis. Like Cavasilin. Cavasilis.
I'm terrible. There's something missing in my brain where the name box goes. I'm serious.
It's cute though. I mean, it's alright. Yeah, but anyway.
When I was a teacher in school, it used to take me 3 to 6 months to learn everybody's names. I had to write them down on pieces of paper and stick them to them. It was not my thing, right? I can pull dots together, but I can't remember names. So anyway, then they have also been infiltrated teachers that have put out information that sounds good, but it's actually bad. So confusing things even further, right? So basically the whole thing is full of confusion. And I think that one of the effects that it has to have that level of confusion within the metaphysical arena is that most people can't be bothered, and they just say it's all rubbish and trash, and they just put it to the side. Okay?
Yeah, they just turn off to it.
And that is actually the mind control. They want you to do that. They want every group, for different reasons, to reject the spiritual metaphysical. The mainstream people will reject it because it's not rational and it doesn't go with their liberal progressive paradigm. The conservative Christian people will reject it because it's, demonic and, and it's not in alignment with the Christian teachings, which is not true, by the way. And Christ itself used metaphysical technology, right? So, and then there is the the people of our kind, that a lot of them reject it because they're suspicious of it, because they think it's just another like Masonic trick kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? But in one way or another, they manage to get people to reject the metaphysical. And by metaphysical, I mean psychic energy technology that can be used to shift reality on the one hand, and also connections to higher aspects of one's own being and higher aspects of being in general in the higher dimensional planes that one can associate oneself with to create healing, but also changes and shifts at the physical level and on the earth plane. One of the reasons which they've done that is because that is one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself and for humanity, is to connect with the higher aspects of yourself and with other beings that are at higher aspects of reality that are playing on your team, right? Not on their team, on your team. Being able to distinguish who is on which's team is part of your own spiritual evolutionary journey. You have to learn how to do that. Often, if you follow your gut, you will know who plays for which side. You actually can tune into it and you'll feel it. And if you can't, and you're all shut down and you can't feel a thing, then you need to meditate. You need to do a lot of meditation work. You need to, clear your field. You need to not drink alcohol. And you can drink a little bit of alcohol, but like not in grand quantities, because alcohol is a consciousness diminisher. There's some drugs.
We'll talk about yeast in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's some drugs that raise your consciousness, and there's some that take it down, right? All of them in the long run will mess up your energy field, but at least some of them temporarily will take you to a higher space. Alcohol doesn't, as alcohol will take you to a lower space almost every single time, and it's a gateway substance for the demonic energy and astral negative energy. That is one of the reasons for which it's legal. Okay? Think about it. All of these drugs that are illegal, alcohol is legal. Why is that? Despite the fact that it messes up people left, right, and center, and it creates alcoholics, it creates people that go into rages and fits and do horrible things. It's a very antisocial, anti-society drug, and yet it's legal, and you can find it anywhere at any time, right? With places that are open all the way through the night that can sell you stuff for you to drink. All of this stuff about the fact that drugs are not allowed because they're bad for you. Well, alcohol is bad for you, and it's allowed. It's allowed because it takes your consciousness in a ditch. And if you drink a lot of alcohol, your energy field is like Swiss cheese, and you will have entities of all kinds that are plugging into you and using you as their BICT, whatever. VIT. I can't even spell it. Right? I'm too polite for that. Right?
Such a lady.
Anyway.
Lady Gallanti.
You're right. So anyway, so basically, if you can pull in these higher aspects of consciousness, and if you can truly understand the laws of metaphysics and the laws of manifestation, which are neutral, by the way, they're like the laws of physics. They don't belong to the dark side, they don't belong to the light side, they just are. It's how creation works, right? And if you can get into esoteric knowledge and of the neutral kind, and if you can raise your consciousness so that you can tap into more of who you are, including your reconnection with the source energy, call it God, call it source, call it like central command energy of the universe, call it like originator consciousness, you can call it whatever you want. When you make that connection at the energetic level, it really strengthens. It's almost like an immune system for the energy field, right? Makes you stronger. Your life starts moving better and so on. In some ways, this is I do all of this talking work and then I do my healing work. My healing work is very aimed at like getting people back into their wholeness, but also reconnecting them to the fullness of who they are on all dimensions, right? Okay. Very often people have a whole bunch of trauma that they need to undo before they can do that effectively. But ultimately, that is the goal. The goal is to reconnect them to their own light, and to their own knowledge and essence. Now, this part is so important to the powers that be, New World Order, Dark Elite, whatever you want to call them, Dark Magicians, last level of the 32 layers of the basement, right? It's so important to them that when Atlantis went down and the reboot happened, they went out of their way to torture and exterminate all of the people that were carriers of the light side of the knowledge. Okay? So they kept the dark side of the knowledge, and the light side of the knowledge is only inside of the DNA of the people that have reincarnated with it. But in terms of it being in the world and practiced and all the rest of it, it's not there. Not to its fullest extent anyway. There's small little pockets that have continued, but it's not present in the way in which it was present before the fall. Okay? So reclaiming that is actually a really important part of the journey, which is why my site is called Reclaiming the Light, because it's about reclaiming the part of humanity and of the human being that had to go underground after the fall, and bringing it back into the now, right? So so it's an important piece, and it's the piece that is in some ways least understood, right? Although there are a lot of people that have their own connection and memories and that figure it out anyway, right? But in general, it is still the part that is least understood. And it's also the key to our own freedom, because once we truly understand who we are from a multidimensional level, because the human being was always designed to be 12th dimensional. The human body was designed to be 12th dimensional. It wasn't designed to be this just physical vehicle. It was designed to be something that could connect at much higher levels, right? And that's part of what the genetic manipulations that happened around the Atlantean time were actually, and prior to that, were actually about. They were about shutting down the multidimensionality. They were about shutting down the potential of the human being and turning him into just a being that produces and works and reproduces, right? So
that's not very different from how they still are, because that's still the plan.
That's still the plan.
A self-reproducing slave bot that can be sold en masse to Galactic Enterprises Incorporated.
Absolutely. Well, their plan is always the same, right? In some ways, their plan is always the same. They want to, on a very mundane level, they want control of this plane. We are a slave race that produces for them, that they keep herded in emotionally and mentally and spiritually in a very small container, so that we can be very easily pushed around and told what to do, and we're used to doing that, so we do. And we don't really expand much beyond certain kinds of boundaries. When we do, such as a shift point in consciousness time, like right now, then they crank up the mind control machine like they have been doing for the past 100 years. They start polluting everything, and I'm not just talking on the physical level, I'm talking even on the spiritual level. They start polluting everything. So they throw even more demonic images at you. They throw toxic sexuality at you. They throw pornography at you. They throw, artists that shake their booty in a certain way. And not that it's bad to do that, but it keeps everybody in the lower chakras, right? Keep everybody in the first three chakras of security, safety, and fear. Sexuality, but not inspired sexuality. It's kind of a low vibe sexuality, and disempowered, and you keep them all in the first three chakras. That way nobody goes into the third eye and the crown. Nobody goes into the heart chakra, and you keep everybody resonating within this very specific band, right, of energy, which feeds them on one level. Energetically, it feeds them. But also, it's not just about the feeding, it also keeps you controllable, okay? Because once people really truly discover who they are and their own truth, and they start getting guided by higher principles, you can't control them anymore. And there's growing numbers of us that can't be controlled anymore, but there's still a lot that can. And if we go back to the concept of initiation, right? This is a multi-lifetime, thousands of lives long initiation process through which humanity, every 13,000 so years, has the opportunity to break through and go to the next level, right? And to do that, it has to break through the mind control, it has to find its true self, and it has to break free and find its sovereignty, right?
That's about the sum of it, yeah.
That's right. And in the past, it has failed many times. Does it matter? No, we're still here. We just do it again until we get it, right? But now we have more than ever the consciousness and the awareness to break through. What we need next, as the next ingredient, is the fortitude to break through. So we have the consciousness and the awareness, right? Now we need the fortitude to actually do it. It's almost like the action of doing it, okay? So on the one hand, you can say, Ebola, nasty, oh, you know, it's bad, blood rituals, death, everything, right? But on another level, it's like, okay, and here's the test. How are we going to approach this? What are we going to do? It's our opportunity to break through the battered wife syndrome. You know? Battered humanity syndrome. It's our opportunity to do that. It's our opportunity to go into the higher level. We can do it. And, you know, the opponent is worthy. Like, it's not like a piddly opponent, but it's also an opponent that uses a lot of trickery and illusion to get the job done. And we can break through that too. Okay?
Yes. We're
Yay.
beginning to, I mean, it's like, I've been using this analogy for a long time, but is the idea that a long time people have been in the audience of the show, and recently people are now stepping up onto the stage of the show to see how it's being done.
Yes.
And you're seeing in the wings, you're seeing all these people who are pulling levers and you know, making string happen and flying people, and it's all done through very mechanical, very regular means. No magic is involved, but it looks like magic, and and now people are beginning to get the consciousness of the magician themselves, the conjurer, understanding how it's done, and learning to recognize it when it happens, as it happens, as opposed to, well, 10 years ago in 9/11, da-da-da-da. Hey, look, tomorrow there's going to be a thing, because we now recognize that they're going to do it on some kind of satanic festival. You know, we can see their plan. We can see it all, kind of almost predict what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. And the next stage is don't let it happen at all.
That's right.
You know?
Well, call it before it happens, yeah.
That's right. That's right. So we're getting there. Progress, yay. We are getting there. Only 5 times 13,000, 50. What is 5 times 13,000?
So 52,
62,000.
65,000. 65,000, that's a pretty, yeah, anyway, but look, it's harder down here than you might imagine, guys. You know, to actually get something like this off the ground. What do you think? Oh, I don't know.
No, just a couple of false starts, right?
Yeah, no, Katie, they just expect too much. And that's why they're disappointed, and it's all about, you know, you can't expect too much. This is Earth, by the way. You have to remember this. this is the place where shit happens in the worst possible circumstance, and that's part of the that's part of the game, it seems.
Apparently, it's a PhD planet. No, seriously, it's where people get their, it's like, oh, did you go to Vietnam? Did you go to Earth? Afterwards they're like, there's special bars in the higher dimensions for people like us.
Oh, that's nice. That's something to look forward to.
Which took thousands of years to recover from each lifetime.
Yeah. I could do with a couple of lifetimes of just foot massage.
On that note, it's my time.
Yes, it's your time. Thank you so much, Katie. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Then the next time we'll do the big 60s job if I'm up to it.
Thank you very much, Katie. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks, will we? When's the next schedule?
Yep. I think my health is kind of in check now. I've been taking a lot of iron, and my blood is back to normal. And so I should be good to go. Okay.
Excellent. Your blood is strong, my dear.
My blood is strong now.
Shungite is the gateway, says Nancy. I'm going to bring Nancy in a second. Sweetheart, thank you so much. And
have a wonderful rest of the day with your thing, and we'll talk later. Okay?
With my thing. I'll enjoy playing with my... anyway, let's just put a couple of seconds on, and then I'll be back. Let's just go above the clouds for a second. Here we go. Right.